Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Storytime Society. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm so happy you're here. I'm so glad you're alive. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. I feel like I just sounded so ingenuine saying that, but I love you guys so much. And if you haven't already, please press the subscribe button and maybe give this video a like. And then also, please let me know what you think about the stories at the end of this episode. Comment down below. The theme of today's episode is relationship problems slash bad husband, fiance, boyfriend. The title of the first story is My 29 female fiance, 29 male, Irish goodbyed me at a bar and is now acting strange. Advice? Sorry for the long post as I'm trying to include all the details here. My fiance has been acting strange lately and I'm not really sure what to do. This all started last weekend when we went to a very busy bar downtown. I was uncomfortable as I typically don't love packed bars such as this one. I have social anxiety. I expressed this to my fiance and we ended up having some of his friends meet up with us. Things got a little better for me as I consider them friends as well. After a while, I noticed my fiance wasn't around us anymore and so I checked my phone. He had texted me 20 minutes prior and said, "Let's leave and get dinner." I texted him to ask him where he was, and there was no reply. After calling him a few times, he finally answered, and he said that he was outside the bar and then hung up. He wouldn't answer any of my other calls. I went outside, and after looking for him in crowds of people, I finally found him across the street and down the street about a block. He was standing by himself on his phone. I was furious and asked him why he left me and didn't answer his phone, to which he said, "I didn't leave you." I continued to ask questions until he just stopped talking. We didn't talk for the rest of the day. While I recognized he didn't completely leave me downtown, I was still shocked he even left the bar without having a conversation. It was really hard to find him, and while I searched for him, I was alone and drunk in a sea of strangers. Also, I was getting another drink when he left the bar, and I had asked if he needed one. He said no, but never said anything about leaving. Through the week, things kind of went back to normal, although I did text him once about it more calmly, trying to get clarity, and he never replied to my text. Fast forward to this weekend, he woke up and went to the gym while I slept in. He came back from the gym and found me awake but still in bed, and he brought me a coffee, as he often does. I took my time to get up, and once I did, I realized he wasn't at our house anymore. I checked his location and found that he was driving around in our area. I watched as he went in circles until he parked about a mile from our house at a park. We don't frequent this park. He stayed there for about 30 minutes. I texted him and asked where he went. He never replied to my text. When he finally got home, I asked him where he went in a joking, chipper tone. I tried to keep things light so I wouldn't sound accusatory, and he mumbled that he was at the gym. And I said, "No, I mean after the gym. You came home from the gym and then left, right?" And he wouldn't give me an answer. I got angry, and when I continued to press, he angrily said, "I don't know. I was just driving around." I'm not sure how to feel right now. It's very odd behavior for him, and we don't typically keep anything like this from each other. It hurts to think that he might have wanted to get away from me, enough to drive around aimlessly for an hour. I'm totally okay with him having private time. A lot of time he goes into our guest room and shuts the door, and I don't bother him. It feels like something more is happening, but I just don't understand what. I'm not the best communicator, but it's something that I'm working on. But it's really hard to communicate with a partner that completely shuts down. I broke down crying yesterday about all of it. I explained to him that it makes me feel like I'm an inconvenience when he doesn't respond to me and that he's not acting like a partner. After a while, he did apologize for making me feel like he doesn't care about me. He said he does care about me and he loves me, but he still never gave me more context into why he left the bar or why he was driving around. When I asked about it again, he said he still doesn't want to talk about it. I feel crazy. He wants to go back to acting normal, but I just can't shake that something is off. Any advice on how you would approach the situation would be greatly appreciated. There's no option. There's no option for you not to talk about what's going on. You have to tell me what's going on. We're literally getting married, and this is big, big, big red flags everywhere. Red flags are if the only thing you should be seeing in front of you right now is a sea of red flags. Leaving you at the bar? Oh, that's enough for a divorce. If we were married, I know they're not married, but I'm saying, if we were married and you left me at the bar alone while I'm drunk, and you are my boyfriend or my husband, and you are supposed to be my protector, even if you're just my boyfriend. But see you literally never, because what the hell's wrong with you? I'm in a vulnerable position. Why would you leave me alone, drunk at a bar. That's the last thing you should do, because that's crazy. That's enough for me to be like, I'm moving out. That's actually insane. Like, what do you mean? He went a block over and a street down, and he's like, I didn't leave you. Yeah, you did. What were you going to do after that? Were you going to come back to the bar? Probably not. He was probably going to leave. But even if he did come back to the bar, like, why are you going so far away and then not telling me anything about it? He's obviously hiding something because he's being so sketchy. I need to know. I need, like, this. I'm actually very intrigued. I'm very intrigued to know what's happening. But that was posted 22 hours ago, so there's no update, unfortunately. I really wish there was, though. But let's read some comments. Okay. Someone said, trust your gut. Something is definitely up. How you choose to look into that is up to you, but ignoring it isn't going to make it go away. Someone said drugs, and then someone said possibly, or cheating. And then someone said, the park thing sounds a lot more like using than cheating. Hooking up in a suburban park would be much more likely to happen at night than the middle of the day. If cheating, he probably had to take a phone call or something. Say his side piece was blowing up his phone and had to ensure he was out of OP's earshot to have that conversation. Someone said mental health problems, addictions, or there's someone else are my thoughts, because something is up. Bar equals asshole. Driving around equals weird, strange, cause for worry. Include to the list thinking of breaking up and wants a space to sort through it. There is no going back to normal because he will not communicate what's going on. Until he does, things need to be seriously reevaluated. Yeah, he needs to let you know, like, he, especially saying, I just don't want to talk, I still don't want to talk about it. Okay, so there's something to talk about then. You need to talk about it. That'd be so stressful. I would have the worst anxiety. Someone said, that's really weird and strange behavior. The leaving you at the bar was rude and an asshole move. The driving after coming home is very strange. I'd have a serious sit-down talk with and ask if anything is going on, because this behavior is concerning. Ask him if there's more stress lately, if there's anything he wants to talk about or anything he's concerned about. I hate it. I really wish there was an update, but there's not. So we're going to move on to the next story. The title is, Am I the asshole for breaking up with my boyfriend after he said only lazy women stay at home after having a baby and don't work? So my boyfriend and I were talking about the future, and somehow the topic of a stay-at-home moms came up. Out of nowhere, he went on a rant about how only lazy women stay home with their kids instead of going back to work. He said things like it's not that hard to do both, and that moms who stay home are just making excuses and refusing to contribute. I pushed back, trying to explain that raising a child is literally a full-time job, and that a lot of families decide to have one parent stay home because it makes sense for them. But he cut me off and said that's not how it works. You're just lazy. At that point, I realized we had completely different values, and I didn't want a future with someone who thought like that. So I told him I couldn't be with someone who had such little respect for stay-at-home moms, and I broke up with him. He got super defensive, saying I was overreacting and twisting his words, but I wasn't about to argue over something so fundamental. Now, some of our mutual friends are saying I was too harsh and should have just let it go, since it's just his opinion. But to me, this wasn't just an opinion. It was a major red flag about how he views women, relationships, and parenting. Am I the asshole for ending things over this? Edit. Stop saying my post is AIL. I have thought for a long time about posting here. Also, thank you so much for the nice comments. It makes me feel a lot better about the situation. Valid. Valid. That's all I have to say. 100% valid reason to break up, because that's crazy to say that, first of all. You try being a stay-at-home mom, actually, please. Because you probably would send yourself into the depths of despair if you had to be a stay-at-home mom for a day. Like, ugh, I could just get so riled up about this. Like, that's insane. To not have appreciation for women that stay home. Also saying you're not contributing. If anything, they're contributing the most. They're raising a child. They are literally, like, brick by brick raising a child that is also your child. So that's very, very interesting to me. If my boyfriend said that, I don't even, like, I would never be able to get over that. That would be something that if I didn't break up with him, we would just be arguing for the rest of our lives about. I'm so happy that, like, me and my boyfriend we have a lot of similar viewpoints and stances on things. I'm just so happy that is the case, because I could never deal with someone like this. Like, genuinely, if you think that is true and you are saying that is fact, that's wild to me. Someone said, "You need new friends as well as a new boyfriend. Well done to stand by your beliefs. Good luck." I was leaning this way too. OP's friends are just as bad as the ex, or they're actually just his friends that were friends with her by proxy. OP said, "Yeah, it's more like this. Cut them out, girly. If they aren't your friends, they'll just run to him with any information they hear about and from you. That's how you get an ex who knows all of your business without you being aware, and that gives him the ability to meddle in your friendships, relationships, and plans if he chooses to. Don't do it. T sisters. Don't do it. Don't do it." Next story. There is an update, and the original post was 21st of March, and the update was 24th of March. So yesterday, literally. I hope this one's a good one. I, 33 male, rejected my husband, 33 male's offer for a threesome. Divorce? Question mark. Hi, longtime lurker, first time poster in the community. Background: me and my husband, let's call him E, have been married for over a year and have been together for over 3 years. E was previously married for 8 years. During that time, he and his ex-husband had an open marriage but eventually divorced amicably. While they were finalizing their divorce, E and I matched on Tinder. We spent almost 3 months just talking online every day through text and FaceTime before we finally met in person. When we did meet, it was while E was searching for an apartment so he could move out of the house he and his ex owned together. From that day on, we became inseparable and eventually made our relationship official. I must say, this is the best relationship I've ever had. We do everything together. We're both physically active, but also enjoy being couch potatoes, whether it's playing video games all night or watching TV. Last year, E got me into RuPaul's Drag Race, and now we spend our Friday nights waiting for the latest episode. In the early stages of our relationship, we discussed what kind of relationship we wanted. I made it clear that I didn't want to be in an open relationship because it's just not for me. He agreed and said he wanted a monogamous relationship, as that was one of the factors that led to the failure of his previous marriage. We also discussed his preferences regarding his fantasy, which I believe is called a stag or a cuckold kink. Not sure which term applies. He shared that he fantasizes about me being intimate with another man, may it be me using or being used by someone else. I admitted that it would be difficult for me to fulfill that fantasy, but I was willing to find a compromise. So we introduced toys into our sexy time and began incorporating talk about scenarios involving other people during our sexy time. This approach seems to work, as he appears to be satisfied. Over a year later, we got married. It was a mid-sized wedding, around 80 guests at a nice venue. Around 45 guests on his side and 35 with mine. Mostly family and a few friends. We went on a nice honeymoon to Hawaii, staying an entire week there. Earlier today, E and I made plans for some sexy time. While we were in bed and I was scrolling through TikTok, he asked me a question. You probably already know what it is from the title of the post. He asked if I would be willing to open up the marriage for a threesome. He then went on a whole speech encouraging me to keep an open mind and think about it. Once he was done, I immediately said no and asked him what his reasons were for wanting it. He gave me 2 reasons. Fun, excitement, I don't know, it seems like the same reason, but whatever. I asked him if our intimate life was boring and if that's why he wanted to do that. He said no, and that he just wants to spice things up a little. He also mentioned that he had been meaning to ask me this for a while but got too scared to do so. He has been wanting a threesome for a while. I argued, saying, "It's boring for you. You wouldn't want to spice things up if it weren't." I told him that we were becoming sexually incompatible and suggested that we might need to consider being legally separated. Even though I love you and this is going to suck, it's better to end this now because it's something I cannot fulfill. It's against my morals, and even if I did it once, it would kill my mental health to go against my principles just to please you. He got quiet and eventually said that we should go to couples counseling. I told him that there's nothing wrong with him. A lot of gay and straight couples have open relationships, even poly ones, but that's not for me or something that I want to be a part of. I said it's better to just end it now before it reaches a point where you might resent me for not fulfilling your fantasy. After that, we just lay there in bed, deep in our thoughts, and then he went to the store to grab something or cool off. What do you think I should do? Whoa, that's so crazy. That's so wild that, like, all of a sudden you're suggesting that you guys should get a divorce instead of, like, working through things. I mean, I get like his point of saying that he doesn't want him to resent him. A marriage, I feel like, is a lot more serious than that. And I feel like you guys can definitely work things out rather than just like all of a sudden give up. But there's an update, so we're going to read it. Hi guys! Sorry to interrupt, but if you want extra content weekly, go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/storytimesociety. If you want to listen on Spotify because you're trying to fall asleep or you're driving, then head to the link in the description. And if you're there and you don't mind, please rate me 5 stars on there. It really helps with the algorithm. And then the last thing is we have a subreddit linked below. We have a lot of things linked below, but the subreddit, you can share any stories that you want to share. Okay, thanks. Love you guys. I rejected my husband's offer for a threesome. Divorce? Update 3 days later. Hello everyone, I'm here to update you all on the recent happenings since my last post. First, I want to thank everyone who offered advice, both the good and the bad. I took bits and pieces from the comments and used them to guide the questions I asked him. Since my last post, I've been sleeping on the couch for the past 2 nights because I didn't want to be around him. Last night, when I got home from work, my husband and I spent nearly 3 hours discussing our relationship and the threesome he wanted us to engage in. I was very emotional throughout this conversation. And while I may have forgotten some details, I remember the important points clearly. He was very apologetic after seeing how his request/offer upset me, and he assured me that he didn't mean to make a big issue of it. I started asking him questions. I asked if there was a specific person he had in mind for us to engage with in the activity, and he said no. I also asked if he had slept with anyone else since we've been together, and he said no. I asked him if something had happened or changed that made him want to have a threesome. He said no, but he did mention that he wanted to ask just in case my stance on threesomes or non-monogamy had changed. I asked him again to clarify what he meant by spicing things up, and he explained that we've been having vanilla sex, which is why he made the suggestion. I told him that there's nothing wrong with vanilla sex, but there are other ways to spice things up without involving non-monogamy, like the adult toys we use from time to time. I then reiterated that I'm seriously considering separation because of his requests. I also reminded him of our plan to buy a house later this year or early next year and eventually adopt a child to raise as our own. I explained that open marriages have a high failure rate, and I don't want to adopt a child only for them to experience us separating because our marriage failed. While this isn't the case for all open marriages, I'm not willing to take that risk, and I don't want that dynamic in our relationship. He then apologized again and said that his cuck fantasies were just that, fantasies, and that he could live without them being fulfilled and he can just get off and be back to normal. He also told me that he loves me so much and wants to spend the rest of our lives together. I expressed to him that my trust is shaken, and it's going to take a lot of work for us to get back to where we were. He then suggested couples counseling again, and I agreed. I also brought up the idea of seeing a sex therapist, either for him individually or both of us, to help us better understand each other and possibly explore new fantasies that we can enjoy together without involving non-monogamy. He then promised not to bring up anything about non-monogamy. I want to thank everyone who responded to my post. I understand that some of you hoped for a different outcome, but I didn't want to end the relationship solely because of sexual fantasies. I truly hope I made the right choice and I won't end up with a broken heart down the line. Hopefully, this will be the last update on this topic, but if there's more, I'll be sure to reach out again. I'd also love to hear everyone's take on this. Did I make the right choice by not ending the relationship outright? Edit to clarify, when I said my trust is shaken, I was referring to our relationship. I'm questioning everything we've planned together, including whether we should move forward with the house and having children. I don't want to deepen our commitments if this is something he strongly feels about and cannot compromise on or live without. In that case, those plans would definitely need to be reconsidered. Okay. I'm glad that's what ended up happening, because I do understand, like, when I'm thinking about it, if my boyfriend was like, let's have a threesome, I would be like, what the? I would actually smack him right upside the head, if I'm being honest with you. But um, if we were married, like, I don't think I would just be like, okay, well, then I think we should get divorced. I would be like, that messes me up in the head and I need time to recover from that. And please don't ever say that to me again, or even think that in your brain, please. So yeah, maybe that's unhealthy, but I definitely would be willing to like work on it, because it's obviously not something that he like did. Like, he didn't cheat on me or anything like that. So it's just like a suggestion, which would definitely mentally like cause a mental illness in my brain. But I would want to like work on things and try to, I don't know. You know what I mean? I just feel like it's a very big, I get his reasoning, but at the same time, I just feel like it's a huge thing to just like end a marriage over. Or it's a small thing to end a marriage over. When you guys could like work it out, as long as you guys both really want to be together and that's not something that he truly like needs. But I don't think that, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm ignorant in saying this, but I don't think that you need to have a threesome. Like, I don't think anyone needs to have a threesome, right? I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe some people really do need to have a threesome, but I feel like if that's how you feel, then you're probably just like poly and you're in a polyamorous relationship. I don't know. I don't know. I could be wrong. But, anyways, let's read some comments. This person said, it should be okay to open up to a partner as a fantasy as long as they get to say no and you have respect for that and not pressure them. People have fantasies both mundane and wild, and not being able to fulfill them isn't a death knell for your marriage. I think you'll get through this. See, that's what I'm trying to say. Someone said, saying I want us to have sex with other people is a boundary some people aren't comfortable crossing. If I knew my partner wanted to have sex with another person while married to me, even if they expressed it as something they'd only do with my go ahead, that would change how I look at them forever. See, that's how I kind of feel as well, actually. Like if my boyfriend said that, I'd be like, please, I wish that never came out of your mouth. And like, I just never knew that. Because then I would always forever be like, especially, I would always feel like I'm not enough when we're having, like, when we're being intimate together. I'd be like, nah, he wishes another girl was here, you know? Okay. Someone said, trust is a bad word for it, more like security. OP isn't feeling as secure in the relationship as before because they are no longer as confident as they once were about their ability to satisfy their partner, or that their partner can ever truly be satisfied in a monogamous relationship. With their previous marriage being open, it was already in the back of their mind. With it being brought up again, the insecurity is back at the forefront. True. Great point. But I'm glad that turned out the way that it did. Because as much as that would change my view and it would take me a long time to feel 100% secure with my husband again, I wouldn't want to just end my marriage over that if that's something that we can work through. But obviously, if it's like a deal breaker for my partner, then yeah, I can see why I would definitely end it there. That's the only logical thing I feel like. But okay, the next story and the last story is my ex-fiance wants to meet up after leaving me at the altar 4 years ago. Basically, 4 years ago, I, female 29, was supposed to be getting married to my fiance at the time, Jake. Everything was going perfect. I was in my dress, had my makeup on, and taken pictures with my bridesmaids. I was pretty much ready to walk down the aisle when Jay's best man pulled me to the side and said Jay was gone. He had gotten into a car and left, and no one was able to get a hold of him. I came home to our apartment, and all his stuff was gone. He's been pretty much a ghost ever since he left me, and I had to force myself to move on. I ended up going on our honeymoon with my best friends, which was the best decision ever, and then put myself into therapy to heal the horrible trust issues I now have. I haven't heard from him once until today. I guess he got back in contact with an old mutual friend who gave him my number. Jake texted me and said he wants to meet up and apologize. He says he has a lot to explain to me about what happened that day, and I'm torn. I swore Jake was just a dead memory, but my curiosity and desire to get closure with him is pestering me. My current boyfriend supports me whatever I decide, and I feel out of respect to him and how wonderful he's been, I should ghost Jake. I'm very confused. I never expected to hear from Jake again. I have no idea what to do. Please help. Oh, I would meet up. I would need to meet up. If someone left me at the damn altar, like Big and fucking Carrie Bradshaw, I would be like, excuse me, I need answers. Even 4 years later, like even if I'm completely over him, which obviously at that point I feel like you would be, especially if you have a new partner, I would be so over them. But I would be like, yeah, you do owe me an explanation. Let's go. Buy me a coffee and let me know what the hell you was thinking that day. But there's an update, so we're going to read it. Okay. My ex-fiance wants to meet up after leaving me at the altar 4 years ago. Update. First off, I just want to thank everyone for the advice. I honestly wrote the post to just vent my frustration and confusion and possibly get advice. I honestly forgot about the post for a few days until my sister and I were talking, and she mentioned she saw a post from some girl getting left at the altar and her ex showing up again years later. I told her it was mine, and she has been pushing me to do an update post. I figure it might be therapeutic to write everything down as final closing of the chapter with Jake. This all happened 2 weeks ago. Against most of the advice, I did meet up with him. As a lot of you said, it did not add any value to my life. Also, it was part of a 12-step program and he was making amends. We met up at a park and my boyfriend came with me. He sat off to the side while Jake and I talked. I actually feel stupider after meeting with him. There were a lot of things in our relationship that would have had me out of the door if I had paid attention and if he wasn't such a great liar. Basically, for the last year of our relationship, he was doing drugs and cheating on me. He had been struggling with his sexuality for years, and it's not surprising it ended up this way now knowing the truth. His family are incredibly homophobic and horrible people. I wanted nothing to do with them when we were together, but he insisted on them being around just for the big life events, just like our wedding. The drugs were something to get him through the day and act like he was in love with me when he was actually in love with someone else. He had met his boyfriend at work, and I had actually met him a few times when I drop off lunch for Jay. When our wedding approached, his boyfriend said he needed to choose, and Jay chose him. So he packed his bags up and pretended everything was great until his boyfriend picked him up and they moved 2 towns over. I asked him if he was still in love with his boyfriend, and he said no. He thought he could quit using the drugs once he was free of his family and lying, but he couldn't. His boyfriend found out and left him. He kept going, getting high and hooking up with randoms. One of his regular hookups ended up overdosing while they were asleep in the same bed and died, and he realized that he had to get sober. He apologized for not just being honest with me and leading me on like he did. He wished he could go back and be truthful because I would have been the most accepting of him being gay out of everyone. He said he missed me when he left because even though he didn't love me romantically, I was his best friend. It was a lot to take in. I told him while I'm glad he's okay and is doing better, I'd prefer us not to have any contact moving forward, but I do forgive him. He said he understood and he was only in town for a few more days and he'd be gone for good again. I'll admit, when I got home, I cried. My boyfriend held me and ordered me my favorite takeout. He's been really the best, and he didn't pressure me to talk about anything until I was ready. So if I got anything out of the worst day of my life, it's led me to who I'm with now. Love that for you. I mean, yeah, she should have gotten answers from him. And honestly, that is I can understand the struggle of having to go through that. I mean, I can't truly understand, but like I can try and empathize with someone that has to go through that, like a struggle with your sexuality, knowing that because it's like a battle between two worlds. It's like you want the acceptance of your family, but you know that they're deeply homophobic and they're never going to accept you for who you are. So it's like you feel like you have to hide that part of yourself forever. And then you're fully putting on like a full act as far as like going as far as getting married to someone, which of course is very hurtful on the other person's end as well. And I don't think that makes I don't think that's an excuse or it makes this okay, but I feel like that's such a hard thing to deal with. And obviously, I don't even know how to explain it, but like I empathize with him. And then I also empathize with this girl because I can understand how hurtful that would be and how traumatic that would be. Like, that's a very traumatizing situation to go through, but just as it's very traumatizing for this guy to go through. And I'm happy that he's living his truth now and that he is finally like out and now he's going through this program and feeling like starting to be able to be himself without drugs because I'm assuming while he was like finally accepting his sexuality and dating men and hooking up with men and stuff, he was probably never sober. So I feel like it's a completely different world to open up finally being sober and also getting to be your true self. But like obviously there was a lot of hurt done on this girl's end, and that doesn't make what he did right, but I can understand the struggle of having to deal with that. Like, that's just such an internal battle, and that's terrible because you don't see another option. This is like, okay, I'm going to have to live this life, and I'm going to have to make myself think that I'm happy living this life. And then finally you're like, just kidding, I actually can't do this. And I'm glad it ended up this way and not like, because I know that a lot of people choose to end their lives over like, which trigger warning, and like that's a terrible thing. But I know that that happens a lot in situations like this when people feel like they can't come out because their parents are bigots and just genuinely horrible people. And so I'm glad like it's ended up, obviously there's a lot of turmoil that came with it, and the drugs is a whole other situation, and like having to go through waking up next to someone that passed away from drugs is another traumatic situation on top of a whole traumatic life that you lived. So I'm glad that you're like that he's getting through, and he's gonna come, like it's the light at the end of the tunnel. And then I also feel like that's a good closure for her as well, and now she realizes that like, and that doesn't mean that her suffering was any less because he was also suffering at the same time. I feel like two things can be true at once. Like it's not mutually exclusive, but I'm glad that she got the closure and she knows what happened that day now, instead of just always wondering like why. And then hopefully she can work through that and all the trust issues that she has and like the trauma that she has from that situation. And she can realize that like it wasn't about her. Like it's not that she's not good enough or anything like that. It was a conflict that her partner at the time was going through probably for a lot of his life, and this is just the unfortunate situation that had to come about for it to happen. You know what I mean? I feel like I just empathize a lot with both of them, and it's like a shitty situation, but I feel like it's a good outcome. Let's read some comments though. I think like OP, I wouldn't have been able to resist meeting with the ex. Hell, at least she knows. Me neither. I'm curious like a cat with all that entails. Dude could have just written a letter though. Once upon a time, I did a 12-step program. All of them making amends as a wait. All of them have making amends as a late step in the program. You will find much debate over how to do that, though. I had to apologize to my ex. I'll spare details, but I was not emotionally available for her when she needed me, and she rightfully dropped my ass. I knew for certain she had been seeing a therapist about it, but other than that, she had moved on with her life by the time I got sober. My sponsor had me write a letter as if I was going to send it, and then when I brought it to him, I sealed it up and he burned it. I regret much of what happened back then, but it would be unfair to unburden myself by burdening her. Well, I feel like if it's I understand where he's coming from, but I feel like if it's something that was like left unanswered for her, like he completely ghosted her, so I feel like she deserves answers. And I get kind of what he's saying, but I think it's just a different situation. Okay, let's see what other people. I just want to see what other people are thinking about. A lot of people are like saying their stories, but I really just kind of want to see what their opinions are about the story. OOP has a heart of gold, but should stick to no contact for good. New boyfriend sounds like a legit good dude. All the best to both. I think meeting her ex for closure ended up being a good move, but yeah, no contact from here on seems like the best way to go. If anything, now she knows it's good he left when he did, because one, it would have been much worse if he had continued faking it through the marriage, and two, she met someone much better. Yes, true. I mean, I guess now she doesn't have to deal with any doubt that he left because there was something wrong with her, but it didn't sound like she ever blamed herself to begin with, so yeah, that's a maybe. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. I know just ignoring him when he tried to reconnect would have been the smart move, but I don't think I could personally resist the urge to get some kind of explanation or closure. That's the type of mystery that would have eaten at me for the rest of my life. Why was the only option for the ex to pretend like everything was great till the day of the wedding, and then for the BF to pick the ex up the day of the wedding? I'm confused why they couldn't have done this like the week before, hell, even the day before the wedding. I think that she probably just like kind of thought that it was that way, but I'm sure it was something he was battling with. I'm sure it wasn't like a for sure set plan, like, hey, the day of the wedding, I'm gonna skedaddle out of here. He was probably battling with it, like, should I go through with it? Should I not go through with it? But then his boyfriend is saying, you have to pick, you have to choose one person, me or her, and if you choose like her, so I'm sure it's something that he was just battling with. Like, I don't think that it's as black and white as this person is making it seem. I think that it's very nuanced. Is that how you use that word? I think so. But this person said the timeline isn't very clear, but I had assumed their decision was made only a few days before the wedding, when everything was already in motion or set. But then, yes, just a day earlier would have been so much better. Clearly, Mr. X's boyfriend wasn't very solid, and Mr. X was in a pretty dark place and unable to think. It's no excuse to a very horrible thing to do, just an explanation of the possible causes. Yeah, I agree with that. It's no, like, just like I said and before, it's no excuse, and it doesn't excuse that, like, he truly hurt and traumatized this girl, but I can also understand that the mental state that he was in was not a good one. And also he was on drugs. So that even adds like a whole other layer to it. But that's the last story that I have for you guys. So let me know what you thought about those. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Let me know your opinions. I would love to hear the ones that you have like the most passion about. Let me know, because I always love to hear you guys giving your opinions and see if they match up with mine, or if like maybe it adds a new perspective that I didn't think about, so that I can learn from you guys. Tea, sissies. Okay. Anyways, I gotta go. These lights are heating me up real bad. I want a hot dog real bad. I told you guys I'm not good at accents. But, anyways, love you. Bye. Love you guys. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.